Right, I think we should get started. So good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to Kevin, who's joining us from the US of A this afternoon. We're really excited to have you here to talk about one of my favourite subjects in the world. So for those on the call who know me already, you know that I have a huge passion for appreciation and recognition at work. So today we thought it was the perfect day to host a webinar. It's Valentine's week. It's Random Acts of Kindness Day. So what better time to be talking about love and how that translates into appreciation and recognition in the workplace. So I'm Dawn Smedley. I head up enterprise sales at WorkBuzz. So I work with some of our larger clients in terms of helping them with their employee listening strategies through the WorkBuzz platform. But prior to this, I had the best job title in the world. I was an appreciateologist and I worked with Kevin for about nearly 7 years, actually, at a global recognition company called OC Tanner. And I'll be forever grateful for the time that I had there because I got to meet Kevin. And Kevin is my partner in crime today. And Kevin now heads up the Ames Leadership Institute out of Salt Lake City in Utah in the US. And I'm super privileged to call him a friend as well. But when I asked him to join me to talk about appreciation, then he's been lucky enough to travel around the UK with me, talking to lots of organisations about culture, about appreciation and recognition. So he is an amazing storyteller. That's what I love about him the most. And actually, a story about the first time I ever met him was when I went out to Salt Lake City for my training. And I had 90 minutes with Kevin in a room. And it's a good job he had some tissues on his desk because and this webinar did come with that warning because the way he tells stories gives you goosebumps. There's only one way to describe it, really. He has this way of connecting to you as an individual and kind of reframing what employee experience really is, what culture is, and what appreciation is. So hopefully you'll get a little bit of a sense of that today. He's stood on a stage at the CIPD conference before where you could have heard a pin drop after some of the stories. So I'm building him up. He's actually not that good.
It's a fact.
But just a quick bit of housekeeping before Kevin starts, but it is being recorded today, so we'll be following up shortly after with a recording of this. And if you've got any questions during the webinar, just use the Q&A feature and we'll try to get to those. I've got my lovely colleague Rebecca who's on hand, and we'll if we're talking too much, she'll let us know and we'll make sure we try and cover those questions as well. So Kevin, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be with Dawn always, to be able to do some work from the most down person that you've ever run into, Dawn Smedley. Hardly ever smiles, hardly ever participates in everything. A real pleasure, and I'm just pleased to be invited. We did spend about 7 quality years together. It was in a space where we were able to focus on some great research that the OC Tanner company does, and Aon does, and a number of other companies that really add value to the space. But the principles that we're talking about today, the concept of appreciation, is I suspect a few thousand years old, and the principles really have come from endless years of people working together and leaders working with leaders and working with their constituents and really experiencing the benefits associated with it. So I think it's a real privilege for us today to spend a little bit of time doing what we used to do all the time together. It's fun to revisit it again and share some of this great information. So pleasure to be here, Dawn.
I think just to give some context, I think recognition in reality has never been more important. It's always been important, but I think the last couple of years through the pandemic has thrown a unique set of challenges into the world that we've never experienced before. And what's made that even more difficult is that lack of connection, physical connection that we've had with people due to the fact that we've been working from home. We've had a real disparate workplace experience, I think, from people that have had to go in and carry on throughout. We've had people working from home. And I know personally that not being around people has meant that I haven't been able to get the validation of knowing that I'm doing the right things because people aren't seeing what I'm doing. Unless you're on a Zoom call, it's just not happening. And from some research that we did at WorkBuzz recently, the State of Employee Engagement research, one of the biggest challenges that companies see happening right now is that lack of connection, that lack of belonging that people are feeling. So I think recognition and appreciation and what we're talking about today has never been more important. We're also seeing in our survey results across organizations that feeling valued and appreciated is becoming more of a reason for leaving organizations as well. And at a time when we're battling with huge kind of challenges around retention, the headlines are all about the great resignation, the great retention, the things that we can do to impact positively on our culture hold more power than ever before. So we thought, what better time than to bring this to the table and to talk about this today. So what our intention really is to help you reframe what appreciation and recognition is outside of the programs that you might have in place, but really bringing it back to those meaningful connections and those meaningful moments that can be experienced with just that little bit of extra thought. So bear with us today. There's going to be lots of stories, lots of quotes, but hopefully you'll come away with a different feeling about what appreciation is in the workplace. So I'm going to hand over to Kevin, and in true Kevin style, he's going to start with a story.
Well, thank you. I love this quote by William James. He said, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. And I think that's a deep statement, because the idea is to be valued for who we are and for the work that we do and for the loyalty and contribution we make over time to organizations. So I happen to have a really interesting experience many years ago when I was, it was actually about a week before Valentine's, and I was actually out Valentine's shopping, which most people never do, but there I was. And I had an opportunity to go stop into a place in Salt Lake City called Trolley Square. It's a mall, but it's a renovated trolley station. And it's a classic old building with cobblestone floors and wood veneers and just these great little boutique shops everywhere. And my thought was that, for that particular year, I thought maybe it'd be fun just to do a gift basket and just make it look really great, put some fun things in it and let that do it. So as I was walking through Trolley Square, I walked into a boutique shop in there that again has the wood veneers and just the beautiful interior, just has all kinds of things that you'd be looking for, books and candles and, art and all kinds of interesting things on the walls surrounding the little boutique. But what was interesting is right in the middle of the boutique, there was a table, a display set out on a table right in the middle of the store. And in the middle of the table, there were 3 glass cylindrical jars, the kind that you'd see with lids on them. Oftentimes they'll have polished rocks and bamboo in them and those kind of things. But on this particular day, they were filled with little plastic hearts about an inch or an inch and a half across, and the kind that you would open up and put little candy hearts in them, or candy of some kind perhaps. And so I noticed those as I was walking in, and almost instantly I was approached by a lovely young lady who just asked if there was anything she could do for me, anything I needed. I said, I don't think so. I'm just going to kind of look around and get a few ideas today. And then noticing these hearts inside these cylinders, these jars, I said to her kind of jokingly, what I really need is some of those. I thought, having some of those hearts in that basket would be a lot of fun. She just kind of smiled at me politely and walked back towards the counter, probably thinking, here's just another old man wandering the mall, looking for something in there. She walked away, but in less than a minute, she returned and she had a plastic bag branded with the logo of the shop on it. And she turned to me and says, how many of those would you like? Now, I'm taken aback by that because it's very rare that people will sell you anything, let alone give you part of a display. So I was surprised by it, and I thought she was just joking with me. I said, I don't know, a dozen or two would be great. And she literally walks over, opens one of the jars and starts counting out 24 small little hearts and putting them into a bag. And when she finishes, she just turns and hands them to me, says, there you go. And again, I'm still surprised by this, still thinking we're kind of joking about it because, again, it's a display item. You don't see stores give those away. And she hands me the bag and I says, well, thank you. How much do I owe you for those? And she says, no charge. Happy Valentine's. Now, as you can imagine, I'm stunned by now with what's going on in this little shop. And so obviously I thank her, but you can probably imagine what happened next. It was a shopping spree, right? You can imagine now I'm walking around the store buying everything I need and stuff that I don't, just because of how well I've been treated here. But as I go over to check out, I notice behind the counter on the wall, a bunch of recognition certificates are being displayed of the employees that work in this place. And it occurs to me that something's going on here. They have a culture in this shop of taking care of people and doing whatever it takes to make people happy, all the way to the point where they're giving away some of the display items, the little red hearts. And it occurs to me that's what's going on is people feel valued. They've been given permission to care for the customer. And something has made this culture, and the something is the owner of the shop. The people that are in leadership and management in this shop and the employees themselves have made a decision to care deeply about providing service, for making a difference with people. And it was a very impressive story and a tremendous experience. Taught me a lot about what can be accomplished when employees are being recognized and valued. So I think it's a great start for this particular week to just recall that and think in terms of what we're trying to do with our cultures. What are we trying to do with our people, and how are we trying to make them feel? And I think the key to that is this concept of causing them to feel deeply appreciated for who they are and this great work that they do on behalf of our organizations, Dawn.
And I think when we trust people and we align that recognition to what matters most to us as an organization, then that's what we're talking about here, isn't it? It's joining the dots for the employee that shows that they're trusted. And to your point, it's about giving permission. And we really love this quote, because at a time when companies are looking for every source of competitive advantage, the workforce itself represents that reservoir of untapped potential. And that's what we're talking about here. And as we go through the slides today and we think about the difference it makes when you feel appreciated, when someone sees that potential in you, then the world opens up in terms of what that looks like. And I think every organization is trying to differentiate at the moment. Every conversation I'm having with senior HR leaders is around how we attract people to the organization and then how we keep them. And one of the biggest differentiators that we have is our culture. And so it's how we shape that. It's how we make sure that we're intentional about what that culture is and kind of making sure that everything is aligned in that respect. Which brings us nicely on to some of the research that we were part of and exposed to at OCTANA talked about kind of the 6 aspects that impact most on workplace culture. And what I love the most about this research is it's through the lens of an employee. So this research went out and asked employees, what makes a great culture for you? And these 6 principles ring true across kind of so many organizations. And I think for those of you on the call who I've spoken to about this before, then it's just really powerful. And the reason it resonates with me so much is because it's relatable. Because for me, I need to be connected to a purpose. I need to know that I'm making a difference. And I think everybody does. I need to feel as if I've got a sense of opportunity, but opportunity is different to what it might have been in the past. It's not necessarily about a career ladder. It's about feeling like you have the opportunity to learn and grow. It's been part of a successful organization, but more than that, at different levels, it's been part of a successful team. It's feeling success individually. And when you feel that, then you feel connected to the organization and the people around you. It's having a sense of well-being. And to me, that means that I work for a company that cares about me, that has my back. But well-being is coming up in so many conversations right now, from burnout all the way through to how do we help people to feel well in themselves, and what does that look like for our organization? And then leadership is coming through as a consistent theme. If any of you attended the webinar that we had last week on Will Pay Make Us Stay, then what we talked about in that was the fact that we're seeing leadership as a common theme across so many organizations right now. And I think it's because a different set of leadership capabilities are coming through on the back of the pandemic. So that ability to understand what good leadership means within your organization and what does that look like? What are the gaps that we need to fill for? And then ultimately appreciation. And all of these 6 principles are interconnected. And Kevin's going to take you through each one of them now. So we'll start with purpose.
Yeah, I think that connection to purpose that rises out of almost everyone's research that they do over the years relating to the concept of appreciation, certainly, but the concept of leadership and belonging and contribution is powerful. And I love this quote I ran into many, many years ago from Patanjali, author of the Yoga Sutras, thousands of years ago, talked about the significance of purpose and what happens as a consequence of a connection to it. He said, when you're inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. Now, dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive, and you discover yourself to be greater by far than you ever dreamt yourself to be. And that's the power of that connection to a purpose that is greater than yourself. That's when we seem to come most alive, when we're able to make a meaningful contribution to the well-being of other people. And it's been suggested by David Lappin and others that are friends of ours that the very purpose of a business should be to make a meaningful contribution to the well-being of others. It's not a bad life goal either, is it, for us to concentrate on doing that kind of a thing. And we think that this connection to purpose is the number one responsibility inside of an organization. Help them understand the reason we're doing what we're doing and the difference that it's making out in the world. That connection to purpose will make all the difference as we begin the process and as you apply yourself to these great principles. The second one is a sense of opportunity. And the key for this is creating a sense of meaningfulness and purposefulness, significance, if you will, inside of your work. Frederick Herzberg, father of human motivation research for 40 or 50 years, discovered that the greatest motivation in life isn't money. And I think we've known this for centuries. People are not coin operated. What affects people the most is a sense of opportunity. Often we're asked, well, an opportunity for what? And he discovered 4 very specific things that rose to the top when it comes to what creates meaning and purpose in the lives of people and causes them to feel significant. And the first one is the opportunity to learn. As human beings, we're crafted to seek learning. And inside of our professional jobs, the idea that we have the opportunity to learn is critical. Every day that we go in, we derive meaning from the fact that we are able to learn something new and do new things to really make a difference with people. The second thing that he discovered as a principle was to grow, but in responsibility. A lot of people talk about the idea that when they go to work, they want to learn and grow, but that's a little bit too generic. What Herzberg discovered was that people want to take on more and more important work. This doesn't always mean that you're being promoted to a significant position. What it means is the work you're doing becomes more and more significant to you, and by extension, the contribution you make becomes more significant to your customer. So the idea of growing in responsibility is a critical thing. As a leader, am I paying attention to whether I've placed my people in a position to succeed? Am I providing all the conditions necessary for their growth by giving them a chance to learn and then giving them an opportunity to grow in responsibility? So they're constantly being challenged to produce more and to contribute more. And the next principle is that very contribution that we're talking about. The opportunity to contribute in a meaningful way to the well-being of other people. I'm not sure there's a higher calling than that in the world, is there? That we really have this opportunity to make a difference with people. And as I think about my job as a calling, instead of just a place to go work, it becomes a purpose, not a place. This idea of contribution drives me, inspires me, gives me meaning behind what I'm doing. So to learn, to grow in responsibility, to contribute to the well-being of others. And then Herzberg said, the fourth element of this is to be recognized for achievement. And notice the achievement aspect of this. It isn't being recognized just for showing up to work on time or doing common everyday things. The idea is that when I achieve things in the organization that is my job, that I should be achieving, that I'm recognized for that, that someone is paying attention to that, they're valuing it, and then they're taking a minute to convey that value back to me. And that inspires me to stay the course. We visit with a lot of organizations around the world, and they're all talking about retention. How do we retain people? And I like to change that conversation to the idea of loyalty and not retention. There's a lot of things we retain that we actually don't want. So what we're really looking for is loyalty with people. And it's an environment that has these things that cause people to want to stay because they're having the experience they want. If compensation and benefits are fair, if they're having the kind of employee experience that really makes a difference for them, that's what causes people to be loyal to an organization and stay. So if you're focused on that idea of keeping great people, these are the principles that are going to do that along the way. So we move from purpose and opportunity then to this idea of playing for a winning team. All of us want to play for a winning team and be successful with what we're doing. And there's some things that govern that. So we talked about this idea of purpose, and you begin with that purpose because that's what frames the work that we're doing. It gives us the thing that we're going to focus on and how we do our work and what the difference is that's being made. But what creates the fulfillment of purpose is the work that people do. And if it is great work, and again, this is great research that was done by the O.C. Tanner organization a few years ago on the concept of great work, making a difference that people love. And I don't think this is new news. I think this stuff has been around forever, but it points to what people do when they feel attached to a purpose. And there's a specific group of people that produce great work consistently over time, and they're called engaged employees. Some of you have probably heard the term of employee engagement a few too many times, but the idea is real, that people choose to engage with an organization and its mission, vision, and values, and they choose to engage in the production of great work on behalf of that in order to fulfill the purpose. So it turns out that it's an engaged group of people that form cultures. We don't form cultures from the top of the organization. It's the people inside the organization that decide to work together synergistically to create these cultures that Stephen Covey talked about in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And there's something out here that creates engaged people. And the beginning of that is causing people to have this deep sense of being valued, that the work they do and the person that they are and what they bring to work every day is valued, and that's what causes the connection. When we can appreciate and celebrate people for what they're doing, it creates a connection. And that connection to the mission, vision, values of the company, that connection to producing great work on its behalf, that connection to making a difference out in the world with people, that connection is what forms that culture. And it's all driven by the purpose. The purpose is the thing that articulates what it is that we should be doing. If we can complete this cycle, we're going to give people this deep sense of winning and working for successful organizations. So as we move through what those great principles are, make sure that your people know the contribution they're making and that they feel like they're making a difference and winning at their particular organization. As we continue on from here, touching on each of those as we go, Dawn talked beautifully about the idea of well-being, and well-being is a critical factor in the world today. There's a number of things that touch on it. These are a few of those things. The whole person approach to well-being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, but there's also some enabling factors, occupational, financial, environmental well-being, and social. Are we placing people in the right kind of environment? Are they in the right kind of culture? Are they receiving the things that they need to receive professionally to get a sense of being well in the space that they're in? Is there meaning associated with their job? Again, is there a sense of purpose here? And these are the things that really create a deep feeling of well-being, and people that feel good about themselves and what they're doing. Again, they just naturally do great things, take care of our customers, make a difference for them as we go forward. Let's go to that next slide, Dawn, and talk about the concept of leadership. There are many significant world-renowned leaders that talk about the idea that leadership is nothing more than influence. We don't have the power to dictate or demand. We've learned over many years that compensation itself doesn't cause people to choose to engage. But what does that is this concept of influence. And the only way to have influence as a leader is to put together a combination of two things. One, exemplary behavior. Two, effective communication. But communication is only important if they believe in you. And they believe in you after they see your behavior as a leader. It is that behavior, in fact, that causes them to trust you, to know who you are. And then they will listen to what you have to say. If you're talking before you have established yourself as a trustworthy leader, somebody that they want to follow, you're more or less kind of wasting your time with the talk. They'll listen once you've proven yourself. Exemplary behavior is really the key. Ken Blanchard, John Maxwell, and many others have spoken to this idea of influence. Your job is to be an influential, inspirational leader. It takes some study and a lot of practice to get to a place where we are authentically this, but this is what we owe our employees inside of the organization. And again, with great leadership, they feel valued, they feel appreciated for what they're doing as we go forward. And this idea of appreciation then becomes a significant factor. Dawn, if you'll move to that next slide. When we were made a leader, we weren't given a crown. That'll be disappointing to many of you, James Kotson in particular, where it's not about that. I noticed that James said hi to you, Dawn, and didn't bother saying hi to me, and that's fine. We'll deal with it the best we can. But James, you weren't given a crown. You were given the opportunity and responsibility, thank you, to bring out the best in others. And if I ask you a question, if we were in a group together, and I would ask you the question, are you good at bringing out the best in yourself? Are you good at bringing out the best in others? And I think that's a tremendous talent that not all of us have necessarily, and maybe we don't begin with it. But the idea around of kindness and meaning and this idea of appreciation that we're talking about creates that. But my job is very simple, to bring out the best in others. I think it was Charles Schwab, Don, that said the way to get the very best that a person has to offer is through appreciation and encouragement as we go forward. So, you know, it's exciting to talk about these things. And I appreciate the fact that Dawn would bring up these 6 principles, again, that rose out of the research that Tanner did, because it's really given us a great place to focus on.
I'm just flipping through slides randomly now. I was just going to call to what you were saying. We chatted about this the other day, didn't we, when we were putting the slides together? And we were saying that, you know, in any leadership program, just to have this as the statement, say your one responsibility is to bring out the best in others. You know, if that was the ultimate purpose of your leadership program, then that's a great place to start. Because it ultimately is about that. And if we think about those principles that we've talked about already, ultimately it's about you knowing the people in your team, about what matters to them, about how you help them connect to purpose, how you understand what opportunity means to them, how you demonstrate what success looks like and links everything back to that. And as a leader, it's really your job to kind of know what makes people tick and to be able to kind of work with them to bring out the best in them. So I love this quote out of everything that we've included in this deck, I think. And Marcus Buckingham also said, good leaders don't need reminding of the power of praise. They seem to know instinctively that praise isn't merely a reaction to great performance, it's the cause of it. And many of you will have found in your own organizations that there are people that just get this stuff already. They do it instinctively. They know how to do it. They know how to give recognition in a really powerful way to link people back to these things. But it's also an art, and it is something that needs to be taught almost in terms of how you give recognition in the right way. And we'll come on to that later on. But it is something that should be part of your learning and development, almost as a reminder to say, when you are giving recognition, be specific, be all of these things, and be really genuine in how you deliver it. But we'll come on to that in a bit. Appreciation.
Appreciation, again, a comprehensive word. A lot of people don't go deep enough. In fact, as we were looking at the quote previous to this, Buckingham's great quote, and some of this great information here, I think what we find out when we dig in with organizations is leaders are not studying these things enough. They're not going deep enough into the meaning associated with the words that we use. We're dealing with them superficially, but we don't go deep and learn what they really mean, what the intention behind them is, and how to execute. Execution is critical. When the pressure's on and the lights are brightest, it is the people that execute that win the game. You are probably doing what I'm doing and enjoying the Winter Olympics, and we're watching some of the greatest skiers in the world miss gates and not qualify. The best female skier in the world hasn't been able to finish any of her first 4 races because something is getting in her way of doing that. And the idea is that you know, we can get people to places where they can really thrive and excel at what they're doing, or we can struggle with it. And even the best in the world struggle with it from time to time. But I think our responsibility is to understand what we're talking about. Appreciation has kind of 3 definitions to it. The first is a sensitive awareness or understanding. It means I appreciate something. It might be art or fine wine, but I have an appreciation for it. I know that there's a story behind it. I know that there's meaning associated with it. And I learn to be a connoisseur of it. And I can do that with people as well and have this great sense of awareness or understanding. There's a great story about this, about a young girl who was in elementary school, and she was struggling with her attention span. She just was a fidget. Maybe you know people that are just kind of bounce off the walls and all over the place. Dawn's doing it now. Again, Mr. Kotzen does it all the time. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to pick on him for a while, so I'm going to do it today. But she was just a fidget to the point where her parents were getting very concerned about it. So they took the young girl to a specialist, and the specialist spent a couple of hours with her. And then he had brought the young girl and the mother into his office. And he says, now, I need to talk to your mother for just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to leave you here in the room talking to the young girl. He says, we're just going to go outside on the other side of the door. We'll just be right there in the hallway. While I'm gone, I'm going to turn on the radio just to keep you company, and we'll be right back. So he turns the radio on, some lovely music is playing, and he and the mother get up to leave the room. Before they're even out of the room, the girl's already fidgeting and moving all over the place. As they step out of the room and he shuts the door, he says to Mom, now just look at your daughter, just watch her through the window. In less than a minute, her daughter is dancing all over the room to the music that's on the radio. And so the specialist just kind of lets it sit for a couple of minutes and lets the mother watch this. Now the mother's thinking, what's the big deal? This is my entire day. This is 24/7 for me. I watch her dance all the time. What do you want? What are you wanting me to watch here? And after a couple of minutes, he says to her, you know, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. She's a dancer. If you'll put her in an education path based on dance, she'll learn all of the other competencies as a natural consequence of her involvement and her engagement with that. If you keep her in public school, that's likely to drive her crazy because that's just the wrong kind of environment for her. Well, this young girl's name was Jillian Lynn. Jillian Lynn, the dancer. Jillian Lynn, the choreographer, world-renowned, award-winning choreographer, London, Paris, Broadway. She's a business speaker and influencer, a multimillionaire, a difference maker in the world. Or she's just Jillian, the little elementary school girl who they wrote a prescription for and told to calm down. But that's not what they did. We had someone who had a sensitive awareness or understanding of people, an appreciation for people and things. And when he observed this young girl and that her response to music was to dance and to get up and move, he recognized that wasn't a problem. That's a positive thing. And because he put her in the right place, on the right path, everything changed. And it's a powerful idea. We've got to learn how to have a sensitive awareness and understanding of people, then place them in a position to succeed and provide all of the conditions necessary for their growth. And they will shock you at the heights they're able to reach and the contributions that they're able to make as a consequence of that. Principle 1, a sensitive awareness or understanding. Principle 2, associated with appreciation, is expression of it. This is where the concept of recognition lives. There's no such thing as a recognition program. There's simply moments, meaningful moments of recognition. Their intention is to convey appreciation to someone else, the act of using words to express gratitude. And this moment is not complete until the person receiving it feels deeply appreciated. It's not enough for you and I to take action with a moment of recognition that we think is right, that we think took care of it, or that would have pleased us. The idea here is to have a moment that is meaningful to the recipient. And as much as we possibly can, we want these moments to be done in front of others, in front of their team, department, or organization in some way, because it really makes a difference. What we have found out through the great research from Tanner and others is that everyone involved in the process is blessed by the process. The giver is blessed by the giving, the receiver is blessed by the receiving, and the observer is blessed vicariously through the observing. And the numbers suggest they're blessed almost equally, that they're receiving the same amount of value from those moments. So it's important that other people see you recognizing others who are achieving things inside of the organization. So make sure that you reframe the concept of recognition to be a meaningful moment when we are expressing and conveying to other people our appreciation for them, but make sure that they have received it. In fact, make sure that you know that they have felt appreciated as a consequence of this. And the third definition of appreciation is really about value. And Angela Duckworth, a friend of ours who came into our conference, spoke to us about her book Grit. And if you've never read the book Grit, please get a hold of that. But what she discovered was that the subjective experience of effort, what it feels like to work hard, changes when it's rewarded in some way. And again, I think we've known this for thousands of years, but in more contemporary times, more research has been done to validate this very thing. So the idea of a reward, the reward can be just the moment itself. It doesn't necessarily have to mean they're being given things, although a symbol of their work is often important and valuable, but sometimes it's simply the expression that makes a difference. And if we'll apply these principles, then we can go to that final definition associated with this, that's going to be the activating element associated with these 6 principles, Dawn. And that third one is just simply a rise in value. Appreciation applies to real estate investing, doesn't it? It applies to regular investing with capital, but it also applies to people. And it's a rise that's like the tide. It raises all boats. Everyone associated with it is raised. Their value is raised. Everything about it is significant. When we say it raises all boats, imagine that the mean level, the average level of productivity in your organization just suddenly starts to rise because everyone feels a responsibility to the contribution the organization's making to others. And that's what happens when companies do this well. We see this tremendous rise in value across the board, and organizations are far more successful. So Dawn, as we talk about appreciation, these 3 things I think are super critical to it. And there's a wonderful story that I like to tell that comes from an interview that I read in a book by Jack Canfield called The Success Principles. Jack Canfield is one of the co-authors of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, which many of you are probably familiar with. They sold more than 1 billion copies of Chicken Soup for the Soul. I understand Jack made hundreds of dollars from the sale of that. But there's an interview in his book called Success Principles with a billionaire developer out of California named Ken Baring. And the interview was between Jack and Ken talking about life, talking about success and the balance of success with significance, the concept of meaning and rich fulfillment, even happiness. And Baring, who is the billionaire that's made amazing contributions around the world, done significant things in his life. He says, you know, Jack, as I look back over my life, I can separate it into 4 very distinct phases. Phase 1 of my life, I call my stuff phase. When I was younger, I thought the accumulation of nice things would make me happy. So I set out to accumulate stuff. I bought a nice home. I bought nice cars. I bought a nice boat. I bought a nice small private plane, you know, the stuff we all have. And I was surprised to discover that happiness didn't arrive with any of those things. There was no sense of fulfillment associated with the possession of any of those things. And he says, you know, I'm a pretty smart guy. So I quickly moved to phase 2 of my life, which I call better stuff. And so I bought a luxury home. I traded in those cars and I bought luxury cars. I traded in my boat and I bought a yacht. I traded in my little private plane and I bought a fully customized jet. And I thought, wow, living in that home and flying around the world in this full-size jet, surely happiness arrives now. And shockingly, happiness didn't arrive with any of those things either. Here I was accumulating the nicest stuff I could get my hands on, and nothing was causing me to feel a deep sense of purpose or meaning or significance. They were just things. And again, Ken Baring's a smart guy, so he quickly made the transition to phase 3 of his life, which he called different stuff. And he and 2 of his friends purchased the Seattle Seahawks NFL football franchise for $1 billion. That's Dawn's kind of money. I don't understand $1 billion. But he buys this football franchise and he thinks, you know, if I'm on ESPN television, I'm in the luxury boxes at football games and I'm running around with these great athletes and, you know, celebrities, and we're just having this experience in addition to all the other successes I'm having, surely meaning arrives now. Surely I get a sense of fulfillment and happiness arrives as part of that. And he takes over the running of this football team, and ultimately the Seattle Seahawks football team will win the Super Bowl, actually. But as he's running the team, time is passing. several weeks pass, a few months pass, and he's still in phase 3 of his life. He hasn't experienced any change by adding this NFL football franchise to his life either. On one particular day during this phase 3 experience, he gets a phone call from an associate of his. And this associate happens to run a foundation. The foundation is focused on delivering wheelchairs to third world countries, to children in particular who have stepped on landmines or been otherwise disabled. And this association is asking him to go on a trip with them to deliver 40 new wheelchairs. And he understands the game. They're a foundation. He has money. They're wanting him to go on this trip and do some great work and really make a difference in the lives of some kids, come back and make a contribution to the organization. That's exactly what happens. He goes and he hands out some wheelchairs, and he really makes a difference. And he comes back and writes a very healthy check to this foundation. And then life progresses. He goes through a few more months and nothing's changed in his life. We're still in phase 3. He isn't feeling anything significant when he gets a second phone call from this organization asking him to go on a second trip, which I thought was pretty smart on their part. And of course he goes and he has a great experience, and he really makes a difference in the lives of some of these people, these young kids. And he returns and writes another check, but remains in phase 3. He's still not experiencing the happiness he's looking for, the fulfillment, the rich sense of significance in his life. It isn't until the third trip that Ken Behring goes on with this organization that something happens that informs you and I. On the third trip, he goes to South America, and he's doing there what he's been doing in other places, assembling wheelchairs and placing children in them. And he's just completed a larger wheelchair, and he picks up this damaged 11-year-old boy and places him in his new wheelchair. And as Ken turns to walk away, the boy reaches out and grabs a hold of his leg and won't let go. The boy is talking in his native tongue as fast as he can. Tears are welling up in the boy's eyes. Ken doesn't understand the language and is taken aback by the situation, doesn't quite know what to do, and is looking around for help. He finally gets the attention of a young man who has both languages, signals for him to come over. When he arrives, the young man listens to what the boy is saying. And then he looks up and says, "Ken, this boy is telling you that he doesn't want you to leave yet. He wants you to stay longer. He wants you to stay long enough so that he can memorize your face. So when he meets you again in heaven, he can thank you again for bringing him his new wheelchair." And Behring said, in that very instant, I moved to phase 4 of my life, which I call service. Oh, it isn't about me and accumulation. It's about them and contribution. And happiness arrived instantly and has never left. Ken Behring flew home from South America and started his own wheelchair foundation and other foundations, and is in the midst of giving his billions of dollars away, having discovered what Abraham Maslow and others discovered at the end of their lives. It's not about getting to the top of self-actualization pyramids at all. It's about transcending that and becoming a person of service and making meaningful contributions to the well-being of other people. And I think, Dawn, that story kind of is the epitome of what we're talking about here. Isn't it amazing that tremendous amounts of success and notoriety did not create happiness for Ken Behring, but one moment of appreciation did? And here's the quote we mentioned earlier, that the way to get the very best that a person has to offer is to expose them to appreciation, encouragement, moments of recognition that really call out who they are, the great work that they do from day to day, and their loyalty and their contribution over time. Dawn.
Wow, that's really powerful. And I think we're coming towards the end of the webinar now. It's Random Acts of Kindness Day today. So hopefully we've got you thinking slightly differently about the difference between appreciation and recognition and what it truly is at work and in your lives, really. I'm going to send these slides through afterwards, and this is more about how to give recognition at work. You know, it's about making it frequent and making it timely. One quick story to share was a moment that we created for Mel, who heads up our customer success and operations team, last week here at WorkBuzz when she was celebrating her 5-year anniversary. And the little things that we can do create that feeling that Kevin talked about, can create those goosebump moments of connection between the people that you work with. And we had Mel's husband and her little boy attend on the Zoom call in the background. We had clients leave messages for Mel, and each person kind of told a Mel story in their own way. But you can see Mel's face on the right of the screen. There was laughter, there was tears, and it was just a beautiful moment that took a maximum of 20 minutes in total just to get everybody together. But the impact that that had for Mel in terms of how she felt about working here at WorkBuzz, about the contributions and the difference that she's made in the time that she's been here, and actually the impact that it had on everyone else's faces as well. It softens faces. I always like to describe it, and to Kevin's point, it's the impact that recognition has on everyone around you when it's been given in the right way and it's really genuine. And everyone walked out of that room feeling more connected to each other than we had done 20 minutes earlier. And that's the power of the moments that we can create in the workplace. So our call to action on the back of today is to go and do something for someone, whether it's at home, whether it's at work. It's Random Acts of Kindness Day. And the Maya Angelou quote is a perfect one to end with, because really what this is about is people will never forget how you make them feel. And that's ultimately the message that we want to leave you with today. So on that note, we will say a massive thank you from Utah and from Milton Keynes. Thanks for joining us. Have an amazing day, and we'll be following up with the slides after this as well. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin.
Cheers. Thanks, Dawn. Just a closing note, Mr. Kotzen, you can go ahead and go back to sleep.
Yeah.